We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I'm the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I'm super excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Mariana Cogan. She is the Chief Marketing Officer at People.ai. Mariana, it's so nice to meet you. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how you answered the question, what exactly do you want to be when you grow up?
Thanks, Christina. Very excited to be here. I think these are very, very important topics to be discussing. So Mariana Cogan, she, her, hers. I'm born in Mexico City. I grew up in a Japanese school in Mexico City. So I think the first notion that I have about what I wanted to be was I wanted to be a scientist. It didn't really last too long because I don't really recall that in a conversation afterwards. But for me, what I knew from an early age is that I had a passion for Japan and Japanese. So actually, after I finished high school, I moved to Japan for 11 years.
Wow.
And then after that, so yes, when I was a kid, if you had asked me, what is it that you wanted to be? I just wanted to read and write Japanese. And then I've had a passion forever and ever to be running companies. I think that I always been a little bit maybe boring. And it was, I think, maybe my dream from an early age to be what I'm doing now. So it's really exciting.
That is exciting. And I'm sure that there's never a dull moment in your current job as Chief Marketing Officer at People.ai. How do you think your personal journey has really led you up until this point?
That's a really good question. And it really makes me realizing that every good decision, bad decision, lucky situation, unlucky situation, like everything kind of works itself out. As we always say, the journey, even though on the LinkedIn profile it looks like a very nice, smooth, journey, it wasn't really like that. But the three components that I think that really helped me to get to where I am now, it's I actually started my career in Wall Street finance, and I didn't like it at all. Yeah, it was not for me. So I met an American businessman in Japan who invited me to work with software companies. So I've been in the industry in the software space for many, many years. So that was kind of like one of the things that shape what I'm doing now with People.ai. Then I went to work with MadWorks, PTC, companies that are very well known in the software space. So that's one component. Secondly, that digital transformation. And I think it really comes almost from when you're very different from an early age, because you can imagine Mexican in a Japanese school. Mm-hmm. Actually, my middle name is Vladimir. And when I was young, I had very short hair, which not very common for, in the Latin world. And one of the toys that I actually enjoyed the most was my probability tables. Mm-hmm. So you kind of get used to be very different. And I think that's what allows me to do some of the things that I'm looking to be doing, with People.ai. That transformation being from really, I think it comes from being really comfortable from the inside on doing different things. You feel like empowered that it's okay to be different. It's okay to go on, breaking the ceilings, doing different things. So that was the second component. And then thirdly, I actually bought from People.ai 3 years ago. So this is a very interesting, transition in my career. Yeah, I bought from People.ai 3 years ago. Then we went to win a big award in the industry, and then we created a category. All that happened even before me joining them. So I think that living in Japan, it really helped me to learn to build that relationship with a vendor.
Absolutely.
And that's the other portion that really got me to where I am. So I think it is that, early software conversation, the comfort with doing different things, unique things, and that's what, People.ai is doing. And then that partnership that you want to join a company where you know the people. So, I've known our CEO for already, a good number of years. So that's all coming into play into this very special sauce.
I mean, that's incredible. And I think you're right that our lived experiences and learned experiences, for that matter, to really impact how we show up every day. And it sounds like a full circle moment coming to People.ai as well, and really believing in the mission, the vision, and the product of the organization. I have a lot of questions around your experience in the software industry and, of course, company culture. But what would you say is the current next problem you're trying to solve?
That is a very interesting question. And I think it's around the lines of leading with responsibility in a world that is continuously changing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as leaders, we have now different obligations that we had in the past with the rate at which everything is changing. So I think that rather than seeing it as a problem, I almost see it as an opportunity, building a more diverse, work environment, making sure that different people can really, participate. Like one of the things that I did at PTC that I really enjoy was really creating a space where different people with different backgrounds can really have a successful career, because then you're building almost like a win-win scenario. I started myself, I have an accent, so even building a place where people with an accent can be successful, building a place where maybe parents with younger children, or like all these different combinations can really just can be the most, and then that's a win-win scenario. So I think it is a challenge, but I think I see it as an opportunity.
Absolutely. It's an opportunity, it's a journey, it's something that happens intentionally as well. And I read in your bio that you have a lot of experience in the software industry, talking about what you just mentioned in terms of responsibility, uplifting voices. Can you tell us a little bit more about initiatives you work on specifically at People.ai to really elevate that responsibility in the technology space, which is incredible, and what you really mean by that responsibility of leaders?
It is a great question. I mean, and all of you know very well the statistics that, especially in the technology industry, still minorities are very, underrepresented in all the different, components. So I see it as a responsibility. So I tend to use the word responsibility a lot, because I think that it's almost adding a different lens to the conversation, where you're really proactively making sure that you're supporting, that you're leading the change, rather than just being observer of what is happening. So yes, we do have many initiatives, especially with the technology component, really an outreach. As you well know, I just joined People.ai a few weeks ago, but we do have already a good number of programs to make sure that we're reaching out, that we're helping. As a matter of fact, this morning I had a ERG conversation, and really how is it they're going to be empowering, how is it that we're going to be joining different communities, so that we can really start inspiring more people to be able to see that you can come from a diverse background, and there's going to be a place for you in the technology industry, and you're going to be able to make it to the top. So I think one of the things that we do is really supporting ERGs. It's really supporting, working with people from different cultures. So those are some of the plans that we have in place.
I think that's great. I think employee resource groups are incredible kind of places to really have these conversations, and also kind of ask what people need to really feel seen at work, feel like they belong, and feel like they are in an equitable place, in terms of no matter where you sit in the organization, if you are a formal people manager, an executive, or someone who just joined the organization. From your perspective, how are you kind of operationalizing equity at the organization in different processes?
That's a great question. And I think it goes back to what we were just talking. It is when you operationalize things that you're really helping the change. So I see it almost at three different levels. One, it is at the personal level, really trying to be, mentoring, sponsoring. I do a lot of talks, around the lines of empowering minorities. So that's almost the first level. Secondly, it's at the company level, as you mentioned. All the different policies, the different programs that we have at People.ai. And then there's also a third component, where it is my responsibility to really influence my peers in the industry. That's where you start getting into that really big change when you're just not talking anymore almost like minority to minority conversation, but you are really starting to talk to all my different peers in the space. As a matter of fact, at PTC, I was, of course, I was executive sponsor for the, the Latin ERG. And this time around, I'm actually going to be working with the ERG, the African American ERG, because I think that that's when you start getting into that operationalization that really takes, much more than just what I do, maybe, with Mexican background employees. You're really taking into how do you really influence all the other peers in the space so that finally the technology industry, but as an industry, it's going to be a place where we can see a big change. Because as we always know, the more that we can make a table comfortable for different voices to express themselves in a safe environment where they can really come with crazy ideas, most probably, that's where you really start building those best-in-class teams, and where the ideas are really out of the box, so that you can stop really just doing the same thing because that's what you've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Executive sponsorship is really important, having conversations where you're both part of the community, but also an ally, and really uplifting, voices and empowering folks to speak up and ask for what they need as well is really important. It sounds like, the role of leaders, as you mentioned, is changing, really making sure your company is set up for success, and managing your most important asset for talent is important. Are there any other key ingredients that you found working at kind of different organizations and People.ai that you need to have at a company, let's say like non-negotiables, in order for people to feel like they are in an inclusive culture?
That's a great question. So some of the policies that we're working with is really transparency. We really want to make sure that every member of the organization has really access to the same level of data, so that we're working through using Slack and Slack, really making sure that they can participate in conversations. We have I think it's bi-weekly all hands, so that we can share all the information. The employees can suggest Q&A questions ahead of time. We make sure that we're really preparing a space where everybody, to your point, can really be asking any kind of question that they want to ask. Secondly, really on the listening side, doing much more on the engagement surveys, polls, Q&As. Again, really understanding what is the employee feedback, the sentiment, so that we can really make sure that as an organization, we are always sure that everybody is participating. And then, as I just mentioned, really on the community front, making sure that we have what is ERGs or some other mechanisms, so that people feel welcoming. At the end of the day, we work so many hours. Yeah. That we want to make sure that you're comfortable, you're happy, you have a sense of community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the stat out there is we work a third of our lives, and that is a lot of time. So you really want to feel like your work has value, you're making some sort of an impact, and you enjoy the people you work with. And when we're talking about employee resource groups, really setting expectations, creating a framework for success, empowering voices, we're talking about company culture, and again, authentic, intentional. When you are thinking about measuring company culture at People.ai, are there kind of qualitative and quantitative KPIs that you look to? I know you mentioned feedback, but definitely wanted to ask.
Yeah, I think that from a quantitative perspective, we work very closely on having, service, onboarding conversations, exiting interviews, really making sure that we have, a close pulse on, what is it that is going on. We have numbers, and we're continuously looking to, improve them. We do a quarterly review of our employee engagement. We even look at PTO, paternal leave. I mean, are people really taking enough time to really, rest? As much as we're in a hyper growth space, we really want to make sure that our people are, are happy. That's why, the people in People.ai because we really prioritize, all of our team members. And then from a qualitative perspective, which is always a little bit harder, to measure, but we really spend time understanding that communication, making sure that, everybody is on board, that they can really share, information, opinions. Sometimes, and, we don't really have that, that gossiping, in the old days when everybody was working at the office, we will have the, water cooler corner conversation. But, by now through Slack, making sure that, everybody's comfortable, everybody's aware of what's going on. So those are two areas that we, prioritize. We have a very good senior vice president of HR for whom, this is a top priority, especially getting into that quantification so that we can really see, it's the only way to really improve at the end of the day. It's okay to have maybe not the best number at the very beginning, but now you can improve one step at a time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that effective communication relates to what you were talking about earlier with transparency, really making sure you're setting up an environment where you want to receive and give constructive feedback, making sure that you're leveling everybody up on the team. As a chief executive at, the organization and managing, leaders across the board and seeing that in different departments, how do you think about measuring, the effectiveness of yourself and others as leaders? I know we've talked a lot about kind of the roles of especially managers changing, but when you're reflecting on, effectiveness there, what are things that come top of mind?
I think there are a couple of components there. I would say that one of them is really the professional development of our teams. Mm-hmm. And this is an area that is becoming more challenging now with the remote work. We want to make sure that we're not only onboarding and making sure that there is a comfortable space for everybody to join, but we also want to ensure that as leaders, we're really helping people to develop their careers. And that's an area that is a little bit more challenging these days because, everything is on Zoom. I mean, had I joined People.ai before the pandemic, I would have by now been spending so much time with everybody, and now it's continually on Zoom. But you want to make sure that everybody has the same opportunity, in order to develop their careers. So we really want to make sure that our team members develop their careers. That's one thing. And the secondly, it's really, as you well know, once upon a time, I think the goal was to really make it to the top, work in that large company and really be successful no matter what. But now it's a new generation. People are looking for more that quality of life. So that's what, as I mentioned before, we're even, tracking on, are people taking time off? Are people staying, long, at People.ai? That's what we do, the exit interviews. So we want to make sure that we're really helping developing careers. So I would say that that's one of the main areas that we work with.
Yeah, people definitely want to grow and they want to upskill. They want to kind of learn new projects and skills. And I think that is definitely important. And it's on leaders to really foster that too. You mentioned earlier too, that it's not business as usual and people are testing out new initiatives and we're seeing a lot of innovation across the board, which is really exciting to see. Is there any kind of recent piloting of new projects or trial and error kind of beta that you want to share with us that you've done at People.ai recently?
It's very interesting that you mentioned this question. Having lived in Japan for such a long time, I'm a big believer on process improvement. Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer on trying new things. I'm a big believer on empowering the teams to try things. And some things might work and some things might not work. Right. And that's okay, because even in the not working is an important lesson, because everything is a hypothesis. The world is changing so fast that what we really have is hypothesis. We go and test them. Mm-hmm. We do them most probably in a pilot, in a small setup. If it works, we expand that. If it doesn't work, then the important thing is to really learn the lesson so that then you can come up with almost like a phase 2. So one of the things where, where we're putting a lot of emphasis is that from a marketing perspective, it's really in the personalization. Because if you think about it, you normally, you want to make sure that people know who you are, that that we know you. Are you new to the company? Is it the first time that you're hearing about People.ai? Is it maybe the second time, the third time? So we're doing a lot of work in the personalization front to really find what is it that level that really that really allows to deliver a customer-centric, value-led conversation. I always tend to tell people that it's not that it's getting harder to sell, it's getting harder to buy. There's so much information out there. Everybody says so many different things that the best thing that we can do for our customers is really put them at the center so that we can create content that is really helping them to solve a problem. And then the second component is being able to deliver the right content to the right person at the right time. And we're doing all that through different experiments on the personalization front, which has always been a little bit of a challenge in the B2B space, because we used to think that we were selling into buildings, but we actually sell into people that used to work in a building. And as the expectations are getting higher, everybody spends all day long on Netflix and Amazon, and the bar from a personalization perspective is really high. So that's where we're testing different things, being creative, being innovative, being pioneer. And sometimes we try the things and they work really well, and sometimes no, we take the lesson and then we move to the next thing.
Absolutely. And then you test it out, but you're right, the bar for personalization on Netflix, for Instagram ads, for, when you walk outside your door, it is personalized there. And I think that's something that we're seeing too. Is there something specifically in the marketing space? So whether it's internally at People.ai or something you're seeing out in the world that you are really excited by in terms of how people are kind of marketing to other folks, or just something that you're like, wow, that struck me?
That's a very interesting point to touch, because that's really primarily why I joined People.ai. There's so many really interesting things out there. I mean, we just mentioned Netflix and Amazon, but there's some other companies that are doing some phenomenal work, with their buyer's journey, that I think is really, really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there, even with the best intentions, and you mentioned kind of the trial and error piece, you don't have to get it right every time. I think that's okay. When you're iterating, for sure. Are there any common mistakes you're seeing companies making in their marketing strategy, even with the best intentions, of course, not naming names?
It's there are, I think, two areas. We are still not customer centric enough. We still tend to think a little bit too much about selling.
Okay.
And the problem is that when you're thinking about selling first, you're really thinking about yourself.
Right.
I think many years ago, I had I took a sales class, and the first exercise was to try to sell a pair of glasses. And you would start with, oh, I have these wonderful glasses. They're phenomenal. They're made of this amazing plastic, and the glass is spectacular, and all this and that. And then they corrected us that the first question is to ask, can you see when you drive? Then you're identifying the need. And then the glasses make sense. You're not selling any more glasses. You're really improving people's quality of life.
Exactly.
That's really what being, customer centric is about. And I think that we still miss it, again, especially in the B2B space, where we like to talk about our product. We're so excited about the product.
Right.
But many times we really need to start reframing the conversation and think a little bit more about what is the problem that we're helping to solve for? Why? And I'm very glad that you asked me that question at the very beginning, when you asked kind of the why.
Yeah.
Because that is core to companies. There is a why, and if we're close to our why, we can really deliver more value to our customers. So I think that's the second thing that we're still missing a little bit. It's especially in the marketing space, it's leveraging technology much more. There's so much data out there. There's so much wonderful technologies that get us to do different things. That's it. That's the second place where I would say that the next generation of CMOs, the next generation of marketing professionals are going to be each time much more technology and operations driven.
Absolutely. Making processes more efficient, really leveraging the new technology that's out there. I think that goes to the innovation piece too. and customer centric. So making it about, the folks that you're serving there, and it's about the value, not the service you're providing. What problem are you solving? I like that reframe a lot. You mentioned kind of your kind of executive sponsorship around employee resource groups, February 2022. I can't believe we're in 2022. How is People.ai honoring and celebrating Black History Month this year?
I am glad that you're asking me this question today and not yesterday, because we just did actually this morning our sync up. We are going to be working with our newly created ERG. There's going to be 3 components. Really, from a strategy perspective, we're looking to talk from that past, present, and future. Mm-hmm. Past, really educating, again, going back to the question that you asked me before in the technology space. We still are working with a lot of people who are not as familiar with, the cultural, the heritage components. So we're going to be addressing that from a historical perspective. On the present, we're very lucky to have some phenomenal investors that, that have very successful, team members that are going to be joining us to do a webinar, really presenting again that empowerment, really getting people, excited about all the things that you can be doing. And then from a future perspective, we are going to be really getting to, for the first time, having a very solid strategy for the ERG, so that it can include, for the next year, starting to increase our community outreach, increasing the number of activities. And then one of the things that we would really like to add is a component of a sponsorship. We can kick it off and then make sure that everybody in the ERG gets to know and work with the executives, because that's really a way for everybody to get to know you, so that when the the promotions, interesting projects come up, they really have you in top of their minds.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a really holistic approach too, and working with different stakeholders across the organization and having those goals in mind. Mariana, I feel like we talked a lot about company culture, really making sure that we're focusing on the professional development of your team, creating a space where people can do their best work, being customer centric, what you're seeing in the marketing space. Is there anything that, I didn't ask that you want to share, or 1 to 2 key insights you want to underscore for our listeners?
I think that there's going to be 2 components. First of all, you asked me about, the innovation. I would say that for marketing professionals, really stop trying to guess. By now, we have enough technology to really, operationalize how we do work on the marketing space, really getting to this, concept of revenue intelligence. Mm-hmm. And secondly, I always like reminding people that more diverse companies are more innovative, and more innovative companies are more diverse.
That's right.
I think diversity is something that should be at the forefront of everybody's, leadership thinking process.
I love that. There's so much research out there to support it, and it can't be said enough. Mariana, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Perfect. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me with you.
Of course, and as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in that employee feedback management as a requirement for the organization to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.